Welcome back into the Dead Arm Sports Podcast. Josh and Jell here, back at our normal day of the week, live on a Tuesday.
Live on a Tuesday.
First episode.
I haven't dropped one of those in a minute.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. But first recording of October, one of my favorite months of the year.
October.
Question of the day today. What's your favorite meal to cook? I know you're a big chef in the kitchen, Jell. What's your favorite thing you cook?
Oh gosh, favorite. Okay, probably my favorite Mexican dish is chicken and cheese, like shredded chicken and cheese, stuffed poblano peppers.
Ooh.
Roast the poblanos in the oven for 15, maybe not quite 15 minutes over the broiler. Take them out, throw them in some ice some ice water, cool them down. Peel off the skin, the nice kind of, roasted blackened skin, peel that off, cut them open, take out the seeds, pop off the tops, fill it up with, whatever goodies, chicken, shredded chicken, cheese. I, usually have a mixture of some salsa mixed in, bunch of spices. I usually will, with that chicken, I like taking chicken breast, throwing it into the slow cooker with salsa, a bunch of seasonings, extra black pepper. I've got some dried chilies that I like to throw in there as well, just to, chop up a big ancho chili and gives it a little bit of a smoky flavor. Like to throw that in, and then a little chicken broth. After 8 hours on low or so, take that breast or however many breasts I'm making and shred it. Put it back into all that juicy goodness, swirl it back around, get all those flavors going, throw it into the poblano, bunch of cheese, and then put the tops back on, put it back in the oven for another however many minutes, take it out. I also like to serve that with a side of this really good Mexican corn salad, which it has, it's like a creamy Mexican corn salad, bunch of lime juice, a little sour cream. I top that off with some tahini. Like I said, some fresh lime over the top. It's pretty simple dish, but super delicious. But the poblanos are the absolute star of the show in that scenario. So I love doing that. And I am also I actually, over the weekend, which I'm trying to decide how good it was. I'm 50-50 on it. First time trying it, but it was a Philly cheesesteak pasta dish made with penne pasta, steak, green pepper, onion, provolone, French onion soup, a little can of that Campbell's French onion soup. Mix all, do it up, throw in some cornstarch, whisk that in to make that French onion soup a little bit thicker, so it acts more like a sauce than a broth. And yeah, I don't know. I'm 50-50 on it. I think, it was my first time trying it, trying to make it. I think I diced the onions and the peppers a little bit too fine, so they get a little bit lost in the, they kind of end up falling down to the bottom. So so the bottom is just kind of like a green pepper, onion, saucy, blend, rather than what I think I'll do next time is make them more like slices, like you'd have on a Philly cheese, like a grilled Philly cheesesteak, and do it that way so that you can actually like get your fork into the slices with the penne pasta, with the steak. So I think that's what I'll do next time. But I love experimenting and trying new recipes, and this was the first time I tried it, and you live and you learn, and next time I try it, I'll make that little tweak. But that's my favorite part about cooking and trying new recipes is the next time I make it, I know I'm going to do it a little bit better, and trying something for the first time is, I don't know. I don't know. I love it. My favorite indoor activity, at least if, whether I'm solo or with, or with somebody else, is just cooking, sports on the TV in the background, and making some sort of really sweet dish and spending 4 hours in the damn kitchen and and eating in 15.
Right. That's the worst part about it.
And then having to do the dishes afterwards. Like, God bless the dishwasher inventor.
Yes. The GOAT.
Literally, like Tom Brady, step aside.
Mine, not as experienced in the kitchen, I guess, but I love once it gets a little bit cooler in Wisconsin, especially during the winter, just making a nice huge pot of chili. So throw in your meat of choice, some nice 5 different kinds of beans, onion, corn, mushrooms, hot sauce, just go to town with it and just kind of add something new every time to it. Just make it a little bit different. And it's hard. The wife doesn't like spicy at all.
That's what I was
really
going to
like
ask
spicy,
is like,
so it's
that's what I was going to ask is like, how do you, I guess, when it comes to that spice level, because not everybody likes spicy. And if you're making a giant pot of chili, you're not eating that whole thing. So do you kind of make it nice and, easy for her to eat and then add your own, when you fix yourself up a bowl, throw in hot sauces and whatnot?
Yeah, I've tried that route. I've tried making it as mild as I possibly can, like literally mild chili seasoning, no Rotel, like nothing, and it still was spicy. So I said, screw it. And I'm just making it how I want because I'm the one that usually eats most of it. So
now, do you do it up with like some diced red onion on top and some cheese and some sour cream?
Oh,
Go
yeah.
ham. Hell yeah.
That's
God damn it. I'm hungry, man.
I know. For those
good
of you
stuff,
that
good stuff.
cream their shorts listening to us describe the food and are jealous, we can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports. YouTube, we are live on Tuesdays. Got the chat open, so make sure you subscribe, click the bell.
Ding.
And that way, when our episodes drop, you can ask us any questions. We monitor that throughout the show. If you want to follow Gel, he can be found at DasJel. That's at DASJEL.
Yep.
I can be found at DasJPEC. That's at DASJPEC. You can send us any questions there as well. Any fantasy related sports questions, any topics you want us to discuss on the next pod, by all means, let us know. Gel's usually live on the old TikTok machine on the weekends. Hopefully throwing down some better bets. We were not too hot this last weekend, so we'll try to do a little bit better for you this upcoming weekend. But hey, that's sports for you.
That's betting for you. Like I said, I guess not preface, but I ended the last episode, our quick hitter Saturday release, saying only bet what you're willing to lose. And there was a lot of losing that went down over the weekend. So thankfully, I followed my own advice there.
Yes.
Don't ever bank on a W because they might not come.
Well, Tuesday is our recap show, and we're going to kick it off with the NCAA college football slate from this past weekend. And before we get into the games, haven't had a chance to talk a lot of Wisconsin football this year far.
Hasn't really been much to talk about.
Has not. And after a demolishing by Illinois, the University of Wisconsin kind of goes outside of their norm and fired a coach in season. Paul Chryst relieved of his duties, ended up negotiating his buyout down as well. So to come out of taxpayer money or anything like that. And yeah, Jim Leonhard is now the interim coach. Jim Leonhard is somebody that a lot of fans were clamoring to take over the program. He's been hanging around Wisconsin. This is his dream job. He was a former walk-on with the Badgers and now gets to take over the reins. First off, before we get into
just a reminder on Jim
coaching,
Leonhard, 10 years in the NFL.
Yeah.
That's for a walk-on, coming into as a Badger walk-on, 10 years in the NFL, he had a few years where he was looked at as one of the top safeties in the league. So guy was not only a great Badger, but, turned into a really, really legit pro.
Yep. Before we get into the future of the Badgers coaching position, just kind of want to break down what were your thoughts? I mean, this kind of came as a surprise to me. Usually Wisconsin doesn't do something like this, but I mean, terrible loss at home against Illinois, get demolished on the national spotlight at Ohio State, lose at home as a double-digit favorite to Washington State earlier in the year. I mean, it's is not typical for a Badger team, and I think this was the right move at the time. Are you
Well,
sitting there too, or what are you? What are
and
you
I
thinking?
think I think the final straw, obviously, I mean, to state the obvious, the final straw was getting shut out in the second half from a Brett Bielema led Illinois
Former
team.
Badger
Like
coach.
that's just like, nail in the coffin. It kind of felt like, but I guess surprised in the sense that as you said already, it's not typical for the Badgers to do this, but I think it was absolutely time. I mean, Paul Chryst did lead the Badgers to 4 10+ win seasons, but his last 3 seasons started off extremely shaky. 2020 started off the season 2-3. And yeah, the COVID year, everything was weird, but 2-3 start, not what you're looking for. 2021 started the season 1-3, and this season, starting the season 0-3 versus Power 5 teams. The only 2 W's that the Badgers have on their list are against, FCS, or not FCS, but non-Power 5 schools. So, the win gets kind of taken out of your sails when you start off your season that poorly, because at that point, you're not in contention for the conference title. You're fighting for a division title in what is traditionally a very weak Big Ten West. And, you're not, I mean, that early on in the season to know that college football playoff, not going to happen. That's obviously extremely disheartening. And it's been that way for the last 3 years for this Badger program and for Badger fans. I think that, love what Paul Chryst had done for this program, resurrecting it from that Gary Anderson debacle where he turned, what was it, Tanner Mangum or
McAvoy.
Taylor Mangum?
Taylor
McAvoy. Yeah, exactly. From a safety into a Wildcat quarterback, like that turning it from that debacle back into, traditional Badger football of power running game, play action, etc. And like I said, 4 10-win seasons, but I think it was just time. And I think the timing is perfect given that, you got Jim Leonhard here. He's not going to just sit around and be a defensive coordinator on mediocre teams for much longer. So you've got the rest of this season now to see what does Jim Leonhard have for you as a head coach. And so, yeah, I mean, as much as Paul Chryst, what he's done for the program in terms of 10-win seasons, Big Ten Conference championship appearances, it was just time to move on. And I think that I'm glad that the Badgers did it at the time that they did, to see if Jim Leonhard can get this team to rebound a little bit, because really looked like they just quit in the second half against Illinois. And that's a lot of that just comes down to coaching, and hopefully Leonhard brings new energy.
Yeah, they came out completely flat. I was at the game and it was just absolutely ugly. And no, I agree completely with you there. I think it was the right move. Paul Chryst, third winningest coach all time in Badger history. So obviously left his mark on the program, started off really strong. But like you said, the last 3 years just have not come out of the gate very well and had to make up a lot of ground. I mean, they barely got into a bowl game in 2020 with COVID. Last year, lose to Minnesota when you had a chance to get to the Big Ten championship. So just not a ton of Western Division titles. I like the firing right now as well. You get a nice run of Jim Leonhard to see what he has. And I wonder, Jell, was this move made as well to give Jim Leonhard 7 games to kind of show what he has? Because there is another hot coaching candidate with Wisconsin ties out there we've talked about on previous episodes, Lance Leipold, just turning around the Kansas Jayhawks program. We mentioned former UW coach at Wisconsin Whitewater, won, I think it was some like ridiculous stat. He won like 106 out of 111 games that he coached in Whitewater. It was just unbelievable what he's done.
Almost
So
all of his
ties to
losses,
Wisconsin.
almost all of his losses at
Were in the
Whitewater
playoffs.
were to Mount Union in
Yeah,
the
in the playoffs,
championship
in the
game.
championship. Yep. So I think this kind of gives the Badgers a nice springboard here to see.
It's effectively, the way that I look at it, it's almost like a tryouts for Jim Leonhard to see what he can bring, because the remaining, what you said, 7 games, let's say he goes 4-3 and the team just looks kind of still not any different. Maybe you just say, hey, Jim, we gave you a shot. We got this Leopold, whatever it is. We gave you a shot. There's other coaching candidates out there. Matt Rule's likely gone at Carolina. You got Lance Leopold out there. You got
Dave Aranda, Baylor. Maybe he makes the jump over
Wake
to the
Forest. I'm spacing on the name. He's due for a big jump up, given what he's done for that Wake Forest program that's been traditionally certainly not a college football power. So there's a lot of guys out there, and I think this is tryout season for for Jim Leonhard. So I think the timing is perfect, and that's why I'm just glad that they made the move now instead of waiting till the end of the season and then saying, let's give Jim Leonhard the job now. No, and then potentially losing out on a number of candidates that could be out there at the end of the season. So, and let's say Leonhard doesn't bring any spark to this team. All right, man. Well, we gave you a shot at the head coaching spot. Go get yourself an NFL job, and or a high end. Hopefully that's the route he would go, rather than jumping on another college program. But I think it's perfect timing, and I think it works out. I think for both sides, both Leonhard and the Badgers, and Paul Chryst kind of works out for him with that little not too bad of a little buyout he got there. So he's certainly not going to be going on welfare anytime soon.
No, not at all. Team that is hot out of the gate, I want to talk about, kick off the game recaps from this last week, and that is the TCU Horned Frogs going in, just demolishing Oklahoma 55-24. Oklahoma 2 losses in a row now in conference play, losing the week before to Kansas State. And TCU they got Kansas this week, going to be the site of game day. We'll be talking about that in our next episode, I'm sure. Oklahoma State, Kansas State. So they've got 3 tough games coming up next. But, man, off to a 4-0 start. Fired Gary Patterson last year, bringing over SMU's former coach, and just got him off to a 4-0 start. One of the surprise teams, I would say, along with Kansas in that Big 12 so far.
Yeah, it's funny. Mention Gary Patterson. He's he's the DC under Sark at with the Longhorns, and defense for the Longhorns has been up and down, I guess. So it was clearly the right move for TCU, bringing in letting go of Gary Patterson, who had been there for, pre Big 12. So he'd been there for a long time. But no, I think the bigger story here is Oklahoma. That was an absolute demolishing. And the fact that that previously Clemson DC, now their head coach, he was a defensive coordinator, and it's Oklahoma's defense that is just getting torched. Dylan Gabriel, he got knocked out of this last game, but he got knocked out after they were getting smoked. Yeah. I struggle when I see, this has been my point about like Nathaniel Hackett, offensive coordinator, offensive guy. The Broncos offense has been atrocious. Oklahoma brings in their new head coach. His side of the ball has been an absolute bust. And it's like, I don't know. I sit here and I wonder, it just, some guys are meant to be head coaches. Some guys are meant to just be really, really good coordinators. And this has just been a bust for Oklahoma. Their season is, they're unranked at this point. Don't know the status of Dylan Gabriel going into next game, or maybe it's out there. I don't know. He suffered a pretty
sure
nasty head injury though, so I think the bigger story here for me, at least, is Oklahoma and just the failure of Brett Venables. I shouldn't say failure. That's probably a little strong, but at least to start off his first year of being a head coach at this one of the bigger programs, one of the top 10 programs over the last, since 2000, which is when I started paying attention to college football.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I was 7. So one of the first teams I remember is that OU Jason White team.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. They finished in that 3-way tie with Auburn, and it was Auburn, OU, all of them ended up the seat. Like, I don't know, whatever. Don't need to get into 2001 college football yet right now. But yeah, I mean, Brett Venables, if the defense is why that's where you specialize, and you give up, you were done at the end of the first quarter, just got destroyed. Long ball, whether it was, and it was all on the ground too. So, or at least primarily on the ground. So yeah, OU bust of a season already. And I don't know, man, I maybe this is kind of a good test to what they're going to get into the SEC. And maybe we need to change our expectations on that Sooner program, because the SEC is, it's as deep as it's ever been in terms of competitive teams. And if Oklahoma keeps playing this way, they're going to have no shot at an SEC championship.
Well, and I think Brett Venables, his leash is going to be very short too. 2 back-to-back losses to kick off conference play. And they're not going to want this program doing this heading into the SEC when they move over into that conference. And who knows, maybe his tenure in Oklahoma is not as long as he was hoping, and they do make a coaching change and bring somebody else in prior to them moving into the SEC, and just see that, hey, we gave you a shot. Thanks. See you later.
and go get yourself go work under Saban, get your name back up, and maybe you'll become a DC for another, maybe you'll get another head coaching opportunity. We've seen a number of guys, Lane Kiffin, Steve Sark, who's the butt chin guy that used to coach at Penn State?
Oh,
and the
O'Brien.
Texans. But yeah, he might be up for he might be up for a job at some point coming up. So Alabama's the maybe Brett Venables gets a chance to go there. But I'm going to transition over to, I mentioned the name Stoops, so I got to bring up Mark Stoops and the Kentucky Wildcats. Going down to Ole Miss. Will Levis at the end of the game fumbling, gets sacked, fumbles, strip sack kind of deal when they were driving. And Ole Miss ends up winning that game, but I still think they're two incredibly evenly matched teams. I bet you play that game 10 times, maybe they split 5-5. It just shows me how deep that freaking SEC is when you've got Ole Miss that's winning games from their defense. They have never been known as a great defensive team. It's pretty much the ways that when they were good, or when their programs have been good, it's been high scoring stuff. They've had good enough defenses, but for them to shut down Kentucky, especially early on, Kentucky did have a couple drives late in the game to make it close. And again, Levis fumbles on his own 22, or on the Ole Miss 22-yard line to effectively end the game. But Ole Miss, their defense is what's looking legit. And again, like I said, Kentucky, extremely solid program. Will Levis getting a lot of hype right now for when it comes to NFL draft time. I guess I shouldn't say I'm shocked. I'm certainly not shocked, but it's like, God, we always talk about how Georgia, Alabama, extremely top heavy, and the middle of the SEC is usually solid and the back end is trash. The middle of the SEC is just I feel like they're just continuing to creep a little bit closer to the top of the SEC when you've got teams like Ole Miss and Kentucky that are, I mean, Kentucky, not a traditional SEC powerhouse by any means. Ole Miss, generally middle of the pack. They're up. They're now, up really high in the rankings, undefeated, never lost. And, and I mean, the way that Georgia played too this week, Ole Miss, that if there's an Ole Miss Georgia matchup, this is complete hypothetical, I believe, at this point. But if Ole Miss plays the way that they did this past weekend and Georgia plays the way that they did against Mizzou this past weekend, you could see a total shift up at the top. So it's like, this SEC is so damn deep, and it's really impressive what some of these traditional offense powered teams are doing defensively, being Ole Miss specifically.
Yeah, I'm curious to see Ole Miss. We're going to get to see them for sure against Alabama. They're in the same division, but I'm curious to see if Alabama and Georgia are still the elite of this division and how close some of these other teams are to them. We've seen, it seems like every week so far, there's been an SEC team that's been in the top 10, top 15 that ends up losing, get knocked out. We had Texas A&M. We had Kentucky, Arkansas losing two in a row. So I guess, yes, it's very deep, but I'm curious on what the difference is between an Alabama, Georgia, and then a Tennessee, Ole Miss. So we're going to get to see those matchups. Tennessee plays Alabama coming up, I believe, next week, not this weekend, but the following weekend. So we'll get to see where they compare. We'll get to see where Ole Miss compares, but I agree. I mean, you turn on these SEC games and it's tough. I mean, you want to be for the Big Ten. We're Badger fans, but man, it's
no. I mean, the Big Ten doesn't even compare
football
right now.
No,
not even close. And there were definitely years where it's like, and maybe just me being a homer, where I'm like, I don't know. There's a case to be made where the Big Ten is stronger than the SEC, and there have been years, especially when Wisconsin's up. When Iowa's been up as a program, Michigan State, when those years that they've been up, Ohio State obviously has been awesome. Michigan now is rolling for the last 2 seasons. So there have been years where that debate can be made, but right now, that conversation I don't even think can be had, that the Big Ten can touch the SEC, or any conference at this point can touch the SEC, and the depth. Both, they have the elite of the elite in Alabama and Georgia, and just other teams that are flooding the top 25, and deservingly so.
Yeah.
One last thing just on that. I mean, what do you make of this Will Levis hype? Do you think he has a chance to be the number 1 pick? I mean, CJ Stroud, he's just doing his thing, but it's that Ohio State offense. It's like, when's the last time? I mean, as a Bears fan, Justin Fields,
we'll be talking about him in a little bit here, but
when's the last Ohio State quarterback that's been awesome?
Never.
Exactly.
So,
I mean, they all put up numbers. Dwayne Haskins was putting up record-shattering numbers, and we saw his NFL career. Exactly. So it's like, I mean, what do you do then with CJ Stroud? Bryce Young, he got hurt this week because he got, tackled by a huge dude. Like, guys aren't getting smaller when you get into the NFL. So maybe there's concerns about his size. We saw concerns about Tua's size, in the last 2 weeks, really, about him, him getting thrown around like a rag doll. That's got to be a concern if you're drafting a small guy like Bryce Young. So Will Levis, big dude, tall dude, more of a traditional kind of NFL player, quarterback. He may have a really legit chance at going number 1 right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, you look at a lot of mocks and he's right up there at the top, depending on what team they have projected.
God, I can't wait till mock draft season comes. Let's go.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think he's got the most upside of any of them right now. He's a lot more raw, I would say. And it's he's going to need to go to a team that he can sit for a little bit. If you throw him in from day one and expect him to be coming out firing, I think that's the wrong move for him. I think he does need some time to develop.
I think 1 year.
Yeah.
1 year is good.
Yeah.
But
how many teams are willing to do that?
Exactly. I mean, especially looking at some of these teams. I mean, let's take the Panthers, for example. What are you going to do? Bring back Baker on a 1 year deal for Levis to sit behind him? Hope, there's a lot less patience in the NFL than there used to be. So I don't know. Levis kind of sneaking up those draft boards.
Yep. Any other games you wanted to touch on, Joe, before we shift gears over to the NFL?
Yeah, I guess one last one, just the last one. And quick note, UCLA beats Washington. We had both noted, hey, upset alert here. Game at UCLA. I was wishy-washy on it, just because Washington had looked really impressive in previous weeks, but I'm digging my Dorian Thompson-Robinson as a potential Heisman candidate. That's rising.
That's right. I forgot about those.
Yeah, baby. Baby. It's climbing.
We'll be talking about them and their big matchup this weekend on our next podcast. So if you want to hear that, I will be bringing that up for sure. But no, that was a quality win. It kind of went under the radar. Friday Night Football.
This is what happens when you play at fucking 10 p.m. or whatever Central. Yeah. Games don't get done until 1. It
was a hell of a game too. Michael Penix was bringing Washington back, but just didn't have enough firepower at the end. So yeah, it was a great game to kick off the weekend.
Penix is a really, really good college quarterback. I wish there was. I guess CFL is probably more of where he's going to end up, maybe a backup in the NFL, but he's a really good college quarterback. Like, keep your eye on Washington later on in the season for sure.
Speaking of really good college quarterbacks, Joe, we're going to be talking about some NFL quarterbacks that some of them are really good college quarterbacks here. It is week 5 of the NFL season, 4 weeks under our belt. So we're going to kind of hop around and talk about some NFL quarterbacks here and just kind of go through what we're thinking so far, any storylines that we're looking forward to in regards to that. But yeah, it's been interesting so far. I would say there's been some surprise performances from me. And one of the ones that I want to talk about right off the bat is just Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, for years in Seattle, we're wondering when are they going to let him cook, quote unquote? When is he going to be unleashed in that offense? We saw Marshawn Lynch being a focal point in the offense, where Russ was kind of put on the back burner there, and he gets traded over to Denver and has just so many weapons there. He got a new coach coming in that worked with Aaron Rodgers, that everybody was hyping up Russell Wilson. It's kind of somebody, even for fantasy purposes, I was targeting as a quarterback just because he was going in those middle to late rounds and thought, you could potentially get a top 5 quarterback here. But yeah, what do you think of Russ? I mean, he had a better game this last weekend, and maybe it's just him getting used to this offense. But Javonte Williams goes down this last weekend. It's a huge hit there. And yeah, Russell Wilson is he's not cooking.
I think the offense is what needs to change. He's been, a lot of what Nathaniel Hackett brought over is what Green Bay has been doing with Rodgers. And that's a lot of straight dropbacks, spread it out on, relatively short routes, a lot of crossing patterns, and take the occasional deep shot. What made Russ dynamic in Seattle was a lot of, play action, naked boot to his right, Tyler Lockett streaking down the left,
70 yards downfield.
Exactly. And, the ball goes and almost hits the AT&T Stadium scoreboard. And it's just, and, napalm grenade straight into Lockett's arms. And we haven't seen any of that. It's just been a very there's been no creativity to the offense. If you watch these Green Bay games, which I'm sure you watch most of them, and I'm sure most of our listeners do, they're on, prime time or the big games every week, just about. I mean, it's a pretty, when's the last time there's been an extreme amount of creativity in that Packers offense? Hasn't really been all that creative, all that dynamic. And that's what Russ needs. You can't just have Russ drop back in a 3-step, 5-step drop and expect him to just kind of wing it around the way that Aaron Rodgers can. So I think that's the issue. And that's what makes me question, on top of all these other things about Nathaniel Hackett, I don't know. I just, you brought him in as a play caller. That's why you brought him in. But he's bringing really nothing to the table in terms of creativity. He's bringing that Packers offense, and everybody knows that Rodgers is one of the best pocket quarterbacks ever. I mean, he's on a short list with Rodgers, Manning, etc., Breeze, at least within the last couple decades. So, but Russ isn't that guy. You got to get Russ out on these naked boots and let him, have some space. Again, he's a shorter quarterback too. So keeping him in the pocket, that puts him at a little bit of a disadvantage. Yeah, he's not as dynamic, as athletic as he used to be, in his younger days in Seattle when he was an absolute monster. But still, the guy can roll out. He can make defenders miss, especially, some of these middle linebackers that would be spying on him. So there has to be some sort of more dynamic creativity on that offense. So I guess I'm a little bit down on Russ just because he isn't the athlete that he used to be, and that was such a big part of his game. But I have to put so much onus on Hackett being a play caller, the one that is, he's in charge of what we call if you're a Seahawk. So I don't know. Fantasy wise, I don't think it's going to happen this year. No. I really don't. No. And they're going to need to switch it up, in the next off season or bring somebody or bring somebody in possibly in the middle of the season, another assistant to kind of help Hackett, spark something, that because there's any spark is clearly has evaded this offense. I'm going to kick it over to, I just want to talk about this Mahomes-Brady matchup, I guess, the Sunday night matchup. Both those quarterbacks are exactly what they are, who we thought they were. Mahomes, dynamic, special, making crazy plays. We saw him, do like a pump fake to the right and then a little shovel pass underneath for a touchdown. Scrambling around, looks like he's dead in the water, makes one quick move, scrambles up, towing that line of scrimmage, and then is able to, get a deep ball off of that. Tom Brady, efficient, you can never count him out. Obviously, if you watch that game, they were down 7-0. Tampa took the kickoff, fumbled the opening kickoff. KC recovers. They go up 7-0 2 plays later. And and then the next drive, Kansas City scores again. It looked like the Pats, Jesus. The Bucks were done for. And Brady's he's like, nope, I still got this. And he made it a game. It was a legitimate game, which I did not expect at all based on the way that game started. So Brady, efficient. They ran, what was it, 26? I think it was 26 or 27 straight passing plays. That running game could not get it going whatsoever.
They tried.
They tried in the beginning of the game. Fournette didn't do jack on the ground. His only involvement was through the air. But God, Brady still got it, man. Mahomes, the way that he's running around and now it looks like he's got a little bit more trust in his receivers. I'm just sitting here mesmerized is like almost going too far, because it's like, this is what we've learned to expect. But it's like, damn, they're still doing this. Like they are who we thought they were. And they still might be two of the three best quarterbacks in the league. And it's like, you want to write Mahomes off in the offseason after losing Tyreek Hill and bringing in this new kind of random crop of receivers. Brady, his first few games looked like, did he stick around 1 year too long? And I think both of them answered those questions this weekend on Sunday Night Football in front of all of America. Mahomes, nope, I'm the best quarterback in the league. I am this dynamic. Tom Brady, don't forget about me.
Well, and Brady, you got to remember too, he was without some of his top wide receivers a few games earlier this season too. So he's just trying to do what he can there. So, but yeah,
Cole Beasley had like 6 catches the game before, and they picked him up Tuesday. He was playing Sunday. Like that's how decimated that receiving core was.
But we keep talking about it with Tom, and Peyton, Drew Brees, you saw that drop off and it was ugly, and everybody's waiting for Tom to do it. And it's not happening. And you look across the field at Patrick Mahomes, and he's having a fantastic season. You wonder if that's in part because in the past, let's be honest, Tyreek Hill is a safety blanket. If something wasn't there, you could chuck it up to Tyreek, and more than likely he was going to at least come down with it and maybe even get a touchdown out of it too. And now he's got to look around the field, find those open receivers, and he's doing awesome. 11-2 touchdown interception ratio right now. And maybe could it be due to his new quarterbacks coach, Matt Nagy?
You can go ahead and tell yourself that.
No, I will never tell myself that.
Hey, that Nagy was at his best when he was sitting there in that Chiefs system under Andy Reid.
That's how he got the Bears coaching job.
The Bears.
I want to kick it over to a slew of quarterbacks here, Gel. I'm going to name off 5 quarterbacks here.
Rookies,
easy to
second-year guys?
Second-year guys,
Let's go.
Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Trey Lance. How many of these guys are starting in the NFL past their rookie contracts? We were all so hyped up about this quarterback class last year, and it has turned into, let's be honest, a bunch of unknown and dog shit. And Trevor Lawrence seems like he's removing himself from the conversation of dog shit. That was an Urban Meyer thing. Trey Lance, who knows what the future is there. Justin Fields just doesn't seem like he has it. But again, he doesn't have the weapons around him. They haven't given him success. Zach Wilson, still up for debate, had an interesting rookie year last year, started off the season hurt. So still a little bit there. And then Mac Jones hasn't really wowed anybody. Yeah, they made the playoffs last year, not due to his doing. And then we saw this last weekend against the Packers. Bailey Zapp comes in and almost wins them the game in Green Bay, third string quarterback. So, and it's pretty crazy how alike those two guys look, Mac Jones and Bailey Zapp. It's incredible.
No, I was listening to another show. Sorry, I don't have it off the top of my head. So can't get credit, but I was listening to another show and they were, this guy was flipping back and forth between games and he thought that Bailey Zapp, is it Zapp?
Yeah, it's either Zapp.
I've heard Zapp and Zappy.
Yeah.
Whatever. The Zappadoodle was. Don't look that up on Urban Dictionary.
Ooh.
The Zappadoodle. No, he said like, Oh, I didn't even notice that wasn't Mac Jones. So they literally look, I mean, good touch balls. That's, kind of somewhat mobile, but not really, like not big dudes, kind of, little undersized. Like they look on TV the exact same. So, I mean, you asked me how many of these 5 guys, if you give me an over under of 2.5, I'm going to take the under. I think Trevor Lawrence he's a lock.
Trevor Lawrence is locked in. Yep.
He this past weekend, he did lose. I didn't even know this was possible. He lost 4 fumbles. That Philly defense, though, is
legit.
Extremely legit. They were playing in the rain, so that ball's slick, but he's made such an awesome jump from year 1 to year 2 and he's shown that he's kind of that, that high-end prospect that we all thought and knew that he would be. So I think Trevor Lawrence is the one lock. You got 4 other guys. Trey Lance, if Jimmy G balls out this year, which the Niners looked really good on Monday night with Jimmy G, I think Jimmy G's perfect for Shanahan. Just ball distributor, quick release, gets the ball out to his playmakers, Debo, Ayuk, whoever the hell they have in the backfield. George Kittle, like no matter whatever running back that's not injured, able to get the ball out quick. Kyle Juszczyk. I think Jimmy G is like perfect for Shanahan. You look at where Shanahan, the quarterbacks that he's succeeded with, it's been Matt Ryan, distributor, pocket guy. Kirk Cousins, all the way back to his days in Washington, pocket, distributor, needs weapons. Atlanta. Yeah, I mentioned Matt Ryan. Matt Schaub, he was under his, he made Matt Schaub a Pro Bowler. So it's these pocket guys that are distributing. That's exactly that's what Shanahan likes. That's where he succeeded. He's made Jimmy G a super viable option. So if Jimmy G and the Niners, if they go to the Super Bowl again, I mean, what do you do then with Trey Lance? You can't go back to Trey Lance next season. You have to give Jimmy G another. I mean, do you give Jimmy G another 1-year deal? I guess that's the question. But if they do that, then after next season, Trey Lance, his 5th-year option has to be picked up there. Then, so what? That's the ultimate wild card. Justin Fields, it's hard for me to necessarily put a ton of blame on him just because he still has a shitty offensive line. He still has shitty weapons outside of that running back position, which looks legit. I mean, Khalil Herbert this past, or I guess, I don't know. I mean, he's shown flashes and David. Yeah. I mean, but Darnell Mooney as your number 1, that's not enough. He has to be a number 2. They thought Allen Robinson was a number 1. We've seen how he clearly is not the way that he is now. Extremely hot, very, very much underperforming in LA. So so Justin Fields is just not surrounded by guys. It's hard for me to grade what Justin Fields necessarily is. Zach Wilson, pretty dynamic athlete, got a pretty sweet arm, but he just makes too many mistakes and he misses too many throws. He's just not accurate, really. And one final note on Zach Wilson. He catches that touchdown, or that was it was either a touchdown or 2-point conversion.
Touchdown.
And he does the gritty. Is it time to the gritty was cool? We have to retire that, right?
I think so, yeah.
After the Mike Gesicki episode and his just traumatic gritty, now Zach Wilson is doing it like, okay, we're done. It's gotta be done. Justin Jefferson owns those rights, so I'm not going to take it away from him. Everybody else in the league, you can't do it anymore. You're done. It's over. Mike Gesicki freaking ruined it. So
Fun,
no more gritty. That's my ultimate takeaway is no more gritty for anybody outside of Justin Jefferson. But no, I mean, I think one of those, Trevor Lawrence, Locke, other four guys, maybe. I mean, even if you say one, if I put the over under at 1.5, I struggle to take the over on that unless one of these guys really pops next season or this season or next year. But right now, Trevor Lawrence might be the only guy that I would say is a lock to get that 5th-year option picked up.
Yeah, I think if I had to pick one other guy, it probably would be Zach Wilson at this point, just because he has the talent around him right now, and the Jets seem to be doing the right thing and building that offense around him. So I think he's set up to succeed, and if he can't, then that is for sure on him. And fun fact about his receiving touchdown, Gel, is he has more receiving touchdowns in a New York uniform than Kenny Galladay.
$18 million man.
Yes.
Good God. Oh, way to go, Giants. They are that ownership has got to be happy with this new regime. Brian Daboll. Actually, let me transition that over into Daniel Jones and kind of what I want to speak about him. I mean, looks like this coaching staff, this new GM regime is really doing some work. I mean, Brian Daboll proving that he's legit. Yeah, they're 3-1. I mean, they're not a legit 3-1. But Daniel Jones the Giants might be winning too many games for Daniel Jones to be replaced. They're not going to be, if they're already at 3-1, they've got another probably at least, you got to figure 13 games left on the schedule. They can get at least another 3-4 wins out of that. And that's going to put them up near 500, which means they're not going to be having a top 5 pick. So Daniel Jones might have, I don't know if he's necessarily bought himself another year or at least a contract. Maybe he gets another 1-year deal, but how do you replace this guy right now if they're off to, again, I think a phony 3-1 start, but you figure they can squeak out another few wins. That means they're not going to be up, in the Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis conversation at this point. Daniel Jones, man, he might have gotten himself one more year.
Yeah, if they just kind of
which is sad, and I'm sure that Brian Daboll doesn't want that necessarily, but maybe.
No, I mean, he's got 3 passing touchdowns on the season, 2 on the ground, and 600 yards. So not ideal numbers through 4 games. But like you said, they're winning games. They're going to be not drafting in the top 5 more than likely, like you said. So what happens there? I mean, at that point, then, are you just trying to find maybe a veteran quarterback that is not under contract for next year? Maybe Jimmy G makes sense for them. Maybe another quarterback I kind of wanted to bring up too once we're done with this one's Jared Goff. Jared Goff's looking phenomenal right now. Detroit is second year there under Dan Campbell, and maybe Jared Goff, his contract, or the Detroit wants to go and get a quarterback of the future there, cut ties with him, and maybe he's somebody that ends up in New York. I mean, Daniel Jones isn't the long-term answer. I don't know that Brian Daboll going from Josh Allen to Daniel Jones is really exciting him either.
But does Jared Goff excite you if you're Brian Daboll? I mean,
not really, but I mean, if he's putting up numbers where you can build a passing offense around him, I don't think you can build a passing offense around Daniel Jones. And for Daniel Jones, the last couple of years, I mean, he's had just trash to throw the ball to as well. I mean, they spent all that money on Kenny Galladay. Sterling Shepard can't stay healthy at all. Kadarius Toney is Kadarius Toney, and Wan'Dale Robinson can't. He's been hurt to start off the season too.
What's going on with him? Man,
so,
yeah, he's just been hurt.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's tough though, because like you said, you're in that no man's land, or if you're not in the top 5, you're not getting more than likely one of the top 3 quarterbacks off the board unless they end up falling. But
it proves that Brian Daboll was the right hire. That's all I've gotten out of this so far, out of this season, and that Saquon might be back. That's my Giants analysis through 4 weeks.
You know, last one I wanted to bring up is just more to bash him. I seem to find a lot of time to bash him last year, and man, Baker Mayfield, just you need to be done.
Yes.
You need to be done. I'm excited for the day that Sam Darnold is healthy and you get benched for Sam Darnold. That is going to be a great day.
I literally wrote down Baker equals woof. I seriously though, like his days are already numbered in Carolina. He had in Cleveland, we're seeing what Jacoby Brissett is doing with this Cleveland roster.
Yeah.
I mean, it's arguably worse. This Cleveland roster is arguably worse. There's no OBJ there. Him and Baker, how do they not connect? It's like if Baker's playing right now in Cleveland, I don't think that Cleveland has the record that they do, which is not necessary. I mean, not they're not world beaters out there, but Jesus, man, Baker's playing like absolute garbage. And I don't know if it's Baker. I don't know if it's Matt Rule. I don't know, but both need to be gone.
Yeah,
because they are certainly not the answer. Christian McCaffrey looks a little slow, though. I shouldn't say slow, but he used to have true breakaway speed. He had a potential breakaway run this past week, and he was caught. Those injuries may have they may have caught up to him because he does not have the same, breakaway speed, breakaway athleticism that he used to. And that's sad because he's still a young dude, but God, it feels like the injuries are maybe catching up to CMC, and it sucks because he was, he's always been one of the more dynamic backs since he came into the league. And, he's only a few years in, but he just doesn't have the speed that he used to, or maybe just the DBs are catching up to him. But it used to be, hey, he's got a lane. Nobody's catching him. He got caught.
Yeah. Well, the other thing with CMC too is you miss the days of when Ron Rivera was there because they would check down to him so much. And that is where he was so valuable because he was getting double-digit targets a game. And they're not doing that. I don't know what they're doing, to be honest, in Carolina.
This is what I'm saying. Matt Rule, those games, done.
I'll turn on Red Zone if the Packers and Bears aren't on, just because I like cheering for the Bears and who's ever playing the Packers. But Carolina, when they flip over on Red Zone, it's unwatchable. It is just ugly football. Truly. It's not fun to watch. I don't know. You've got a ton of talent there too with Christian McCaffrey. DJ Moore is still a really good wide receiver, but he is in the Allen Robinson boat where they just can't have anybody throw him the football. And it is frustrating, but it is what it is.
Yeah. I feel bad for Panthers fans. Go from Cam Newton to, prime Cam Newton to this. It's like, what a drop off.
Yep. You got one more quarterback, Joe, before we close her out?
Last guy I wanted to mention was just, real quick. It looks like Aaron Rodgers has identified his receivers. Lazard is the middle of the field, just kind of traditional, all reliable type. Same thing with Randall Cobb, kind of all reliable. Dobbs has been identified as more of a playmaker, more of a downfield threat. Certainly he's got a lot more speed than Lazard. Christian Watson is at this point kind of a gadget guy, but pretty much most of what Christian Watson is getting are end arounds and sweeps. Jet sweeps. Yeah. Oh, Jazz Peavy. Remember him for the Badgers?
Man, yeah.
And end around specialist for the Wisconsin Badgers. Christian Watson's effectively in that role for Green Bay right now. But no, I feel like those roles have kind of been identified. And I wonder if this Green Bay offense takes a little bit of a leap going forward.
Yeah, I don't see why it couldn't. You've seen numerous games where just wide receiver drops. I mean, look at the first game of the season. Christian Watson had that one that dropped that would have been 80-yard touchdown right off
75 yards, first play. God,
So
could have changed the whole damn game.
Yeah, and Rodgers outside of Lazard, which yeah, he's familiar with Lazard, but Lazard's been hurt a ton over his career. So you don't have a ton of rapport there. And Randall Cobb is looking kind of like his old self, but I mean, he's still old for a receiver, but it's going to take Rodgers a little bit of getting used to there. Green Bay's run game has looked pretty solid the first few weeks of the season. So it's just
Aaron Jones looks really, really dynamic. Like, I know that they can break off of his contract with minimal dead caps money after this season. I don't think they can do that. I don't think Aaron or AJ Dillon can be just a sole number one, because having that dual threat backfield is so valuable to this offense.
Yeah. No,
but Aaron Jones looks
so far.
I mean, Aaron Jones, kind of the more of that, obviously you watch the games, you see their roles, and it's both of them are just so damn important to this offense.
Yeah. All right, that will wrap up this episode. Can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports, YouTube, Dead Arm Sports. Shocker. Type that into the search bar. Not shocker. Don't do that.
Hardly
Type in Dead Arm Sports. Subscribe, click the bell. That way you know when our live episodes drop. You can ask us any questions in the chat. If you want to ask us questions outside of the podcast, outside of the YouTube, Gel can be found at Dawson Gel. I can be found at Dawson JPEG on all of our socials. Gel's usually got the old TikTok going on the weekends, drop some betting or just comment on how bad his betting has been. I've seen tweets go out about that as well. So
thanks
always
a lot. Appreciate the shout out.
Entertaining all weekend for you. So make sure you subscribe there. And where should they subscribe? What are some of the listening platforms?
Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Pods. Make sure to subscribe, rate, review, whatever your chosen listening platform is. That written review is big time. That's what really helps helps things kind of shoot up the rankings when it's comes time to look at sports podcasts. So those written reviews really help. So if you have a written review, make sure to send us a screenshot of that. Send it to us again at Dead Arm Sports on Twitter, Instagram, or Dead Arm Sports on Facebook, or either at Das Gel or at Das JPEG. We'll hook you up with some free Dead Arm Sports swagalicious sticker action.
Yes, sir.
Make sure to find us on YouTube. Again, search Dead Arm Sports. Channel will be pop right up at the top. Make sure to subscribe and hit that alert button, the
Ding.
Nice bell in the corner.
There's an alert. Is it?
It's a ding.
Okay.
It's a ding. Better be.
Well,
for any betting advice, it should be a.
Yeah, that's true. Well, again, appreciate everybody out there listening. We will be back with you on Thursday. Give a preview, as always, for the college football slate, along with NFL, Drew Lock's upset specials. We got it for you. Make sure you tune in later in the week, and Joe, close her out.
In comes Leonhard. Out goes Chryst. We love you, Paul, but you won't be missed.